The Middle East stands on a knife's edge. Right now, as we speak, a single statement from Donald Trump has sent shockwaves through global capitals, from Tehran to Tel Aviv, Moscow to Beijing. Markets are already reacting. Oil prices jumped 7% in pre-market trading. Insurance premiums for tankers in the Strait of Hormuz doubled overnight. This isn't just political rhetoric. This is the match that could ignite the most dangerous powder keg on Earth. What happens when a former U.S. president declares it's time to look for new leadership in Iran, and what does that mean for your retirement account, your gas prices, and your children's future? Let's rewind the tape. U.S.-Iran relations have been frozen in hostility since 1979, 45 years of missed opportunities, covert operations, and escalating tensions. The nuclear deal under Obama briefly opened a window. Trump slammed it shut in 2018. Then came the Soleimani assassination in 2020 that nearly triggered all-out war. Today, Iran sits at a crossroads. Their economy is collapsing under sanctions, 40% inflation, 30% youth unemployment. Yet their proxy network spans Lebanon, Syria, Yemen, and Iraq. Their missile program advances monthly, and their nuclear enrichment now reaches 60% purity, just weeks from weapons grade. This isn't abstract geopolitics. Think about the gas pump. When Iran threatens the Strait of Hormuz, which handles 30% of the world's seaborne oil, your fill-up costs spike overnight. Remember 2019? When tanker attacks briefly pushed Brent crude to $75 a barrel, that cost American families $400 extra annually, or consider your 401k. Middle East conflicts wipe out billions in market value within hours. The 2020 Soleimani strike erased $1.4 trillion from U.S. stock indexes in one trading session. But here's what Washington doesn't want you to see. Iran isn't monolithic. Beneath the regime's brutal facade, a generation is suffocating. Over 60% of Iranians are under 30, educated, connected, and furious. They flooded streets in 2022 chanting "Woman, Life, Freedom" after Mahsa Amini's death. They've endured internet blackouts, mass arrests, and executions. Their average salary, $180 a month. Their inflation rate on food? 55%. This isn't just about foreign policy. It's about whether America empowers dictators or the people who suffer under them. Let's dissect Trump's exact words. In his Politico interview, he stated, "It's time to look for new leadership in Iran." Notice what he didn't say. He didn't specify methods. He didn't name factions. He didn't outline conditions. This ambiguity is deliberate and dangerous. In diplomatic language, regime change means overthrowing governments. Ronald Reagan used it for Nicaragua. George W. Bush for Iraq. Each time, the cost exceeded expectations. Historical pattern check, America's regime change attempts since 1953. Iran's own Mossadegh overthrow backfired spectacularly, installing the Shah whose repression birthed today's theocracy. Iraq's Saddam removal created power vacuums filled by ISIS and Iranian proxies. Libya's Gaddafi fall left a failed state trafficking migrants and weapons. Success rate? Less than 20%. Average cost? $1.2 trillion per intervention when counting veteran care, reconstruction, and blowback. Now examine the players. Trump's team is already forming. Mike Waltz, National Security Advisor PIC, calls Iran the central threat to American security. Marco Rubio, potential Secretary of State, pushed the 2018 sanctions that crippled Iran's economy but didn't stop their nuclear program. Then there's the Israeli factor. Netanyahu's government views Iranian regime change as existential survival. Their recent strikes on Iranian consulates in Syria show willingness to act unilaterally. And Russia? They've deepened military ties with Tehran, supplying drones for Ukraine in exchange for missile technology. Economic realities create constraints. The U.S. national debt now exceeds $34 trillion. Defense budgets face congressional scrutiny. Public support for foreign interventions has collapsed. Only 28% of Americans back military action in Iran, per Gallup. Yet markets react instantly to perceived threats. The VIX Fear Index jumped 15% after Trump's comments. Gold prices surged. Defense contractors like Lockheed and Raytheon saw stock bumps. This creates a dangerous feedback loop. Military rhetoric lifts certain portfolios while devastating ordinary families at the pump and grocery store. Look closer at Iran's internal fractures. The Revolutionary Guard controls 40% of Iran's economy through front companies. They're not patriots. They're oligarchs protecting their empires. Meanwhile, reformist factions like former President Rouhani warn that isolation accelerates collapse. And the Basij militia, young recruits paid $300 monthly to suppress protests, grows disillusioned. When we analyze protest patterns since 2017, we see a clear trend. Economic desperation now drives dissent more than ideology. Water shortages sparked 70% of 2023's major demonstrations. This matters because regime change from within requires different tools than military invasion. But here's the overlooked contradiction. Maximum pressure sanctions have failed their core objective. Yes, Iran's GDP shrank 12% since 2018. Yes, their currency lost 80% value, but their nuclear program advanced faster than ever. Centrifuges increased from 5,000 to 15,000. Uranium stockpiles grew sixfold. Why? Because sanctions united Iranians against external threats while enriching guard commanders who control smuggling networks. Targeted financial warfare against individual leaders, not broad civilian suffering, shows better historical results. Consider the military chessboard. The Strait of Hormuz is just 21 miles wide at its narrowest point. Iran's asymmetric strategy relies on swarming speedboats, sea mines, and anti-ship missiles, not direct fleet combat. Their 2021 exercise, the Great Prophet 16, demonstrated coordinated drone boat attacks that could close the strait for weeks. U.S. Fifth Fleet commanders admit reopening it would require 30,000 troops and months of operations. Oil would hit $150 a barrel. Global recession would follow. Is replacing one regime worth triggering worldwide economic collapse? Energy markets reveal hidden leverage. America now exports more oil than Saudi Arabia, 5.3 million barrels daily. This fundamentally changes Middle East dynamics. We no longer need Persian Gulf oil, but China does. They import 80% of Iran's crude. Beijing just signed a 25-year, $400 billion deal for Iranian oil and infrastructure. This creates a dangerous triangle. U.S. pushes regime change, China props up the regime, and Iran plays both sides. Trump's team knows this, which is why they're building a coalition of Gulf states to isolate Tehran. UAE and Saudi normalization deals with Israel create new pressure points, yet these alliances remain fragile. Financial warfare offers quieter options. The U.S. dollar's dominance lets us freeze assets and cut off banking access. We've already seized $6 billion of Iranian oil revenue in South Korea. But China's yuan-based oil trading bypasses dollar systems. Russia-Iran drone deals use cryptocurrency. Digital authoritarianism complicates citizen uprisings. Tehran now employs AI surveillance that identifies protesters from CCTV footage before they reach streets. Old playbook tactics fail against new technological realities. What about diplomatic pathways? The JCPOA nuclear deal reduced Iran's breakout time from 2 months to 1 year. Verification worked. IAEA confirmed compliance until 2019. Its collapse taught painful lessons. Multilateral agreements require constant maintenance. European companies fled Iran not from principle, but fear of U.S. secondary sanctions. Future deals must include sunset clauses for sanctions relief tied to verifiable behavior changes, not just nuclear limits, but regional aggression and human rights. Here's the uncomfortable pattern. Every U.S. administration since Carter has oscillated between engagement and isolation with Iran. Obama reached out. Trump slammed doors. Biden attempted revival. This inconsistency empowers hardliners on both sides. Tehran's Friday prayer leaders chant "Death to America" weekly, not because they truly believe it, but because it consolidates their power against reformers. Our political theater in Washington becomes their propaganda tool. The human intelligence gap cripples strategy. Since the 1979 embassy takeover, America has operated nearly blind inside Iran. Most CIA assets were rolled up in the 1980s. Cultural misunderstanding compounds this. When Trump called Iranians terrorists, he ignored that 70% reject mandatory hijab laws according to diaspora surveys. Regime change rhetoric often strengthens the very forces we seek to weaken by creating nationalist unity against external threats. Smart pressure requires precise targeting, not blunt instruments. Imagine being 22-year-old Parisa in Tehran. She graduated top of her engineering class but can't find work. Her brother was arrested for posting Masa Amini protests on Instagram. Her parents sold their gold wedding bands to buy medicine during sanctions. When Trump says new leadership, Does she hear hope or dread of another Iraq-style invasion that would bury her dreams under rubble and foreign troops? Now picture American families. The Ramirez family in Phoenix saw their heating bill jump 22% after Russia invaded Ukraine. Another Middle East war could double that. Sarah from Ohio just refinanced her mortgage at 7%. Market volatility from Iran tensions could wipe out her home equity. These aren't abstract geopolitics. They're dinner table anxieties that decide elections and shape lives. The stakes escalate beyond oil and bombs. Water scarcity already triggers conflicts across Iran. Lake Urmia, once the Middle East's largest saltwater lake, has shrunk 90% since 2000. Its dust storms now blanket cities with toxic particles. Climate collapse and authoritarianism form a deadly feedback loop. Droughts spark protests. Protests trigger repression. Repression fuels extremism. Regime change without climate resilience. Planning creates failed states that export refugees and terrorists. Here's the brutal reality no politician admits. Military action would kill thousands of innocent Iranians, teachers, doctors, students, who oppose the regime but can't escape it. Precision weapons aren't precise in crowded cities. The 2003 Iraq invasion was sold as surgical, yet caused 200,000 civilian deaths. Iranian air defenses are far more advanced today. Retaliation would target U.S. bases in Qatar and UAE, where thousands of Americans serve alongside allies. This isn't fear-mongering, it's historical pattern recognition. The cost of failure terrifies even seasoned diplomats. Imagine Hezbollah launching 150,000 rockets at Israel, dwarfing October 7th attacks, or Houthis closing the Red Sea shipping lane completely, or cyber attacks on U.S. power grids by Iranian proxies. These aren't hypotheticals. They're contingency plans already drafted at the Pentagon. One miscalculation could trigger chain reactions, making Ukraine look like a regional skirmish. Long-term trends favor neither confrontation nor naive diplomacy. Demographics are America's hidden advantage. Iran's birth rate plummeted from 6.5 children per woman in 1980 to 1.7 today, below replacement level. Their population will shrink and gray within 15 years, weakening the regime's grip. Meanwhile, U.S. energy independence insulates us from oil shocks. We exported 3.4 million barrels daily in 2023, more than we imported from the entire Persian Gulf. This strategic patience beats impulsive regime change. Your daily life connects to these chess moves. Gas prices may temporarily spike, but electric vehicles and renewables reduce long-term vulnerability. However, supply chain disruptions threaten medicines. 90% of generic drugs rely on Middle East shipping lanes. That's why quiet coalition building matters more than loud threats. The Abraham Accords, Arab states normalizing with Israel, create containment structures no single military strike could achieve. UAE intelligence now shares real-time data on Iranian weapons shipments. Saudi Arabia reduced Iranian oil purchases by 70% since 2020. These quiet victories go unreported but reshape the region. The technology frontier changes everything. Starlink satellites bypass Iranian internet blackouts. Encrypted apps organize protests despite surveillance. But AI surveillance also empowers dictators. Future strategies must include digital liberation tools, secure communication networks, blockchain-based humanitarian aid, AI that detects torture patterns in prisoner releases. This isn't sci-fi. It's the new battleground where regimes win or lose legitimacy. What happens next? 3 scenarios dominate military planning. First, maximum pressure intensifies. Trump reinstates all sanctions plus secondary penalties on Chinese firms buying Iranian oil. This could crash Iran's currency again, but risks Chinese retaliation against U.S. Treasury holdings. Second, covert action escalates. Cyber attacks on nuclear facilities, drone strikes on guard commanders, support for Baluchi separatists. This maintains plausible deniability, but invites asymmetric retaliation. Third, the wild card, internal collapse. If water shortages trigger nationwide riots, the regime could fracture. But betting on chaos is dangerous. Syria's civil war created ISIS. Libya's collapse flooded Europe with migrants and weapons. The lesson history screams is this: sustainable regime change comes from within. Poland's solidarity movement took 10 years of patient support. South Africa's apartheid fell from economic pressure plus internal organizing. Iran's green movement failed partly because external actors hijacked its narrative. Effective strategy provides tools, secure communication, financial channels for protesters, asylum pathways for defectors, but lets Iranians write their own freedom story. America's credibility hangs in the balance. When we abandon allies, Kurds in 2019, Afghans in 2021, it echoes in Tehran's streets. Protesters ask, will America stand with us when bullets fly? Rebuilding trust requires consistency. Supporting human rights while buying Saudi oil confuses moral clarity. Demanding Iranian democracy while backing Egyptian dictators undermines credibility. This isn't idealism, it's strategic necessity. Authoritarian regimes survive by convincing populations that Western values are hypocritical lies. The economic pivot point is China. Beijing now holds $800 billion in U.S. treasuries. They've spent $60 billion on Iranian infrastructure. Their yuan oil contracts bypass dollar sanctions. Any Iran strategy failing to address China's rise is doomed. But we hold leverage. 85% of China's exports transit U.S.-patrolled seas. Their tech sector depends on American semiconductors. A coalition of democracies, Quad plus Europe, could counterbalance Chinese-Iranian axis without firing shots. This requires patient statecraft, not soundbites. Personal preparedness matters more than we admit. Middle East conflicts trigger market corrections. Diversifying beyond stocks into tangible assets, real estate, commodities, skills, builds resilience. Community networks matter when supply chains fracture. These aren't survivalist fantasies. They're lessons from Lebanon's collapse, where families with diaspora connections survived economic freefall. Your neighborhood matters more than your portfolio when global systems strain. Trump's call for Iranian regime change isn't just campaign rhetoric. It's a strategic earthquake that will reshape military planning, energy markets, and alliance structures for years. But history teaches us that the most effective revolutions aren't imported, they're homegrown. That the strongest sanctions target regimes, not people. That the wisest strategies combine strength with patience. America faces a choice between two paths. One path leads to military escalation, short-term headlines followed by long-term quagmires. The other builds coalitions, empowers internal reformers, and wields economic tools precisely. The cost of getting this wrong isn't measured in billions. It's measured in lives, stability, and America's soul. I've spent 2 decades analyzing these fault lines, from Baghdad to Tehran, Washington to Beijing. The pattern is clear. When we respect local agency while applying consistent pressure, change comes. When we impose solutions through force, they crumble. The Iranian people don't need American soldiers to find freedom. They need American silence when they rise, and American support when they succeed. As you watch oil prices and headlines this week, remember this: the most powerful revolutions begin not with bombs, but with breadlines and internet shutdowns. Not with foreign invasions, but with a teacher refusing to wear a headscarf, a student sharing forbidden books, a mother demanding her son's body back from prison. These quiet rebellions outlast tanks and treaties. What side of history will America choose this time? Will we amplify Iranian voices or drown them out with our own? The answer won't come from campaign rallies or cable news. It will come from whether we see Iranians as hostages to a regime or partners in building what comes after. That's the question worth carrying beyond this video. That's the real test of American leadership.